Tell us about how you got to the point of writing your own book. It was the Student's Guide?
Yeah, so kind of my experience overlaps with both of them, so it's kind of amazing to be here with both of you. When I was in high school, met with Jacques multiple times for this article for the New York Times, and then he later wound up writing the Gatekeepers, and we would meet pretty regularly throughout my senior year of high school and my freshman year here at Wesleyan. Wound up publishing this book called Student's Guide to Colleges through Penguin Books, largely because of my own experience at Wesleyan. Had used the Fiske guide, and it was my favorite guide to college and the one that I used primarily.
And you did, as I recall, you didn't buy these books. You would read them in the bookstore, right?
Yep. Yeah, I would just go to Barnes and Nobles, and yeah, take them off the shelf, sit in the corner, write my notes, and then put them back on the shelf and scurry off.
Did you write your notes on a piece of paper or in the book?
On a piece of paper.
Oh, okay.
and when I was at Wesleyan, one of the primary motivators, one of my best friends my freshman year, I loved Wesleyan and thought it was the best place in the world for me and couldn't see how anyone else could not be happy here. And one of my best friends freshman year came from California, and the weather here just killed him. He got seasonal depression, he was really unhappy, and he wound up transferring out. And I knew one other person who transferred who was an African-American student who felt that some of the resources that she would have liked to have had for African-American studies were lacking, and for her that was a big reason why she transferred. So I'd used all these books that were written by journalists and administrators that gave kind of an overview perspective. But as a student, I saw that there were things going on campus that weren't being covered in any of these books, and also saw that these are big institutions. In the case of Wesleyan, 2,700 people. In the case of a school like UT Austin, 40,000 people. And they're being summed up in these two-page encapsulations. And I thought that the student viewpoint wasn't being as represented as fully as it could be, and also you needed to have more than one perspective on each school. So when I was a freshman at Wesleyan, I started writing a book proposal for my own series of college guide books with a classmate of mine who was also at Wesleyan. And we said that it would be 100% written by current college students, and also that at every school we would have 3 students weigh in, and each of those would get 2 pages. So you could see Wesleyan from the eyes of an English major from New York, an economics major from California, and a poet from Ohio. So a friend, like my friend who transferred because he was from California, he could say, as a student from California, this is my experience, which you could then contrast against someone else's experience. Wrote a book proposal, sent it into Penguin Books, got a call a couple months later saying they actually wanted to do the book, which was terrifying. Because writing the proposal is one thing, having to write a book is another thing entirely. But was able to use the internet to get students all over America to write in for this book, which ultimately wound up coming out from Penguin in 4 separate editions. Right after I graduated from Wesleyan, when I was 23, I moved to New York and just started looking at the overall market a little bit more, that there's 15 million high school students that are looking at college in some form or another every single year. And there's 45 million parents and family members that are really involved in this whole process. So 60 million people in total. And up until this point, the best resource were these print college guidebooks, which on average had about 2 to 3 pages per school. Most of them didn't have photos, they didn't have videos, they didn't have interactivity. And started saying, how can we use the internet to upgrade this form and make it more interactive and take it to a level that previously it hadn't really gotten to. And when you look at all the major college guidebooks, most of them had a minimal web presence, and some of them have no web presence at all. Like the Insider's Guide still doesn't have a website. You also had some websites that opened up a free-form review platform that said, hey, if anyone wants to come and review your school, go for it. But they tended to have either nothing on their website at all, or 1 or 2 disgruntled students who found their way there and posted under 6 different names and said the school sucks, and that was it. So wrote a business plan for what I thought would take this concept to the next level, and wound up emailing a couple hundred Wesleyan alums and saying, look, I was an English major, I don't have the first clue how to get a business plan funded or how to run a business. Can I take you out to lunch, and can you sit down with me and take a look at this business plan and tell me what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, what I'm not thinking about that I should be thinking about? And over the course of about a year, the business plan evolved and got better and better and better. Some of the people who I took out to lunch joined our official advisory board. So Tom Rogers, who's a Wesleyan alum, who's the CEO of TiVo, said, you know what, I'll sign on as an advisory board member. And he's been really amazing. Frank Fiske, who's a Wesleyan alum, said, look, I'll come in as your lead investor. A couple other Wesleyan alums came in as well. And ultimately, the website's unigo.com, and it launched this past September. But we were in stealth mode for about 6 months before that. And what we did was we hired a full-time 18-person editorial team. And we decided we would launch with the most prestigious and largest 300 universities in the country. So these 18 editors, each of them were given a portfolio of colleges that for the 6-month period they were going to specialize in. They did about 2 months of research up front, so they knew the schools inside and out. And then they hired current students on the ground to be kind of our eyes and ears to help us corroborate that initial research and help us understand the university that much more. For the next 4 months, we ran it like a political campaign, where we said every single week at every university, we have a different subsect of students that we're going to target. So this week we want to get, at every university, 10 African-American students. Next week, 10 Latino students. Next week, 10 students who love their school. Next week, 10 students who hate their school. So by the end, we not only had volume, but we also had a representative sample. And when students reviewed their school, we gave them a long-form essay-based survey, which on average made each review more comprehensive and just elevated the quality of the writing. So these reviews aren't 2 or 3 lines. Reviews on Unigo tend to be the equivalent of 2 to 3 pages if they were to be printed out. At the end of the 6-month period, we got more than 30,000 students to create more than 80,000 reviews and photos and videos of their school. Our editors read through every single piece of content. Anything that they felt was inaccurate or inappropriate, they took off the site. Anything that was particularly well written, they starred. And then they wrote their own editorial summaries from having done months of research and read through all of this. So our editorial summaries are kind of like what you'd find in a Princeton Review guide. They're about 2 pages in length. But rather than having quotes by students that are out of context, all of these quotes hyperlink to everything that student wrote. So click on a quote, see exactly who the student was, their gender, ethnicity, class year, extracurriculars, hometown. And see their full profile. So on Unigo, you could either see the editorial overview or you can drill down to the individual student content. The most important thing, though, is if we have we wound up getting at many campuses 2 to 10% of the entire student body to create content without the colleges having any idea we were doing this. So we didn't go through the Office of Admissions or the administration. We didn't even let them know. And in most cases, they had no idea until the site launched. But if we have 300 reviews of Princeton, you can sub-search. You can say, only show me reviews written by African-American female English majors or students from California who were politically conservative, with the idea that we want to move away from the U.S. News and World Report ethos, which is you got to go to that school that's ranked number 3 because it's ranked number 3. We instead want to say, you want to go to a school where someone like you learns the most and is happiest and gets the most out of that experience. So look at our editorial overviews to start, which are completely free. Our entire site's completely free. Look at those editorial overviews to start, but then drill down to see what someone like you would experience at that college. And we launched in September. We got really lucky. New York Times Magazine did a 7-page profile. And in it, they actually contacted an admissions officer at Davidson College and said, hey, what do you think about Unigo? And he said, I heard of it, but I haven't checked it out yet because they haven't spoken with the administration, so I don't think they really were able to get to our students. And that was a case where 1 out of every 8 students in the entire university had created a review or a photo or a video. So he was wrong. But it's been interesting since then. Since September, we've gotten more than 1 million people have come to the site. We're up for a Webby for Best Social Networking Site. And we've been able to just have some really interesting exchanges with universities that are realizing kind of they had their first heart attack when the Fiske came out, and now they're having more heart attacks just with the age of the internet and realizing the tightly controlled conversation they've had for years is now out of their hands. And how do they react? Do they block you? Some universities have said, Unigo, we don't even want you on our campus, and we said, who cares? We can do it anyway. We would love to work with you, but we don't need you to work with your students. Other universities like Grinnell, Grinnell sent out a mailer to 100,000 prospective students saying, check out, in Unigo, 1 out of every 10 students has created a review, and we have no say over what these students are saying. So you've gotten the official materials from Grinnell. Check out what our students have to say, because we trust that they're our best advocates and our best ambassadors. So there's an example where they totally just said, okay, the control's gone, and we're going to be the good guys who are saying it's up to our students now, it's in their hands, and if we're doing right by them, they're going to do right by us.
Now, you mentioned Grinnell, which leads me to think of the question of sponsorship and advertising and how this enterprise will actually sustain itself and make money, which is a issue for the New York Times as it goes increasingly onto the web, an issue that we have not even come close to resolving. Has a college like Grinnell actually sponsored content on your site?
We have 2 categories. So in some cases we have traditional brands. So our advertisers include Apple, Dell, Wall Street Journal, Sallie Mae, Barnes & Nobles, kind of blue chips, and then universities themselves. And what we say to the universities is, you're free to advertise on the site, but your advertisement is going to click through the student review of your school, which you can't control. So an advertisement it's a way for you to get your school in front of students who might not otherwise click on it, but it's essentially an endorsement of student voices other than your own. And Grinnell did become an advertiser, so did Swarthmore College and a bunch of other schools.
And how do you sort of insulate your content from your sponsor? Is Grinnell allowed to say we don't like something?
Yeah, I mean, in any case, any piece of content a user can flag it. Then that could be a typical user at home or it could be a college. If it's flagged, it's reviewed by our editorial team, but it's not our job to present like a candy-coated image of a school. If a student's saying we do drugs at this school and it's flagged, that's their opinion and they have a right to express that. So it's not something we're going to take off the site.
What about basic fact-checking? I mean, have there been instances where a college has brought to your attention that there's a statistic that's wrong?
Yeah, in that case, we fix it right away. There was a school where in the student review they said, I love the president of this university. We go out for drinks all the time. And the president contacted us and said, I'm Mormon. I don't go out for drinks all the time. So we got in touch with the student, and they said, oh, I meant to say he comes to our bar events. I don't know if he actually had a drink. And we said, would you mind correcting that? And then he did. There was another instance where in a video, a student made a video and said there's this particular fraternity on campus, and there's a history of rape that goes on at this fraternity. And the school contacted us and said, this looks really bad. Will you please remove this video? And we looked into the police blotter for that university over the past 2 years and found that there were actually multiple accusations of rape and some that actually led to cases that went to trial. So we said to the university, no, that this is a legitimate piece of information that if a student felt it was important enough to create this video and put it on our site, we're going to keep it up there.
Is the site profitable at this point?
I mean, sites were 7 months old, so we're not yet profitable, but we have some really amazing advertisers that have continually re-upped month over month, so I think we're well on our way to profitability.
I mean, it's hard for me sitting here as best I can as an arbiter to not interpret the existence of Unigo as at least partly a shot at guides like the Fiske guide and, sort of the suggestion that maybe they aren't quite as modern as they should be. Is it in any way intended to be a corrective or an updating?
No, I mean, Unigo doesn't take the place of a well-researched journalistic overview of someone who is doing the interviews and going to the campuses and updating with kind of an up-top view. Unigo is kind of bottom-up. It's the student perspective, and I think it's a complement to the guides like the Fiske guides, and it helps fill in some of those areas that you're not going to see in those guides. It's also the fact that it's continually updated. I remember reading some college guidebooks, a lot of them are updated once every 5 years, or fully once every 5 years, that after Hurricane Katrina said, come to Tulane, like the party scene here is awesome and New Orleans is the greatest city ever, and this was a year afterwards and they just hadn't updated. On Unigo, there were protests at NYU. We had videos of those protests the day of the protest. Students, when things are happening at campuses all over the country, are putting this information on the site, so it's living and breathing and evolving in a way that I think has just been a necessary component that hadn't existed previously.
I mean, how do you read it, Ted? To what extent do you tip your cap to what he's trying to do here?
Well, I think what he's doing is great. I think I applaud you for what you've done, and it's amazing how much detail there is on your site.